Welcome back to MCOC AlBundyRules. So I'm doing something similar to what I did before with Pyslocke against Magik, but looking for a quantitative way. So as even as I can make it, this is 3 rounds, same fights, measured on total hits, total time, and total number of defender specials, because you control the specials, you control the fight. Both champs are awoke R2 6-star and both have 20 sig. Both have Horseman synergy active in all the fights. This is not designed to show who is better. This is 3 quantitative ways that I can really measure them to compare them. And this is just quantitative comparison on these 2 champs on the same 3 fight on 3 relatively fair measures. Again, total hits to do these fights on high health pools, amount of time it took to complete the fights, and amount of power, the level of power control, meaning the amount of hits, the amount of specials the defender uses during the fight, which can be especially useful in later fights. So we're going to compare them at the end of each of these rounds. There will be 3 rounds. First I'll have Pyslocke fighting, then I'll have Cable fighting. Both will have the Horseman, and both will be doing the exact same fights, which is that synergy going on, and see how it goes from there. So I did something similar to this with Pyslocke, and it was such a mixed reaction when I did the Pyslocke versus Magik. I even did a rematch to where I made sure I brought Magik in with the full synergy team, and I think people were misunderstanding the entire point of the video. Some yes, some no. Mainly wanted to show how Pyslocke does, because she tends to get pretty much ignored, and I know especially a lot of reactions to that specific video was, well, it's not fair because she's Horseman, Magik wasn't. So I did a whole Magik synergy team. So I decided, how much fairer can you get with the most acclaimed, the most noticeable, the most praised Horseman, Cable? Both R2 6-stars, both SIG, and just some comparison. A big reason I wanted to compare these 2 is because, as those of you who watch my channel know, well, one, I'm a pretty big Pyslocke fan. I've been heavily looking at possibly ranking her up to R3, but she's also in comparison with a few other champs, to include my R2 Cable. So I can't decide. I have all the resources I need right now to do an R3 mutant rank up, and one will happen very soon, but I haven't been able to decide. So let's look at this. 100 hits, 1 minute and 44 seconds, and allow 2 specials. And the good thing about Pyslocke, you only need 1 or 2 specials to completely lock him down for the rest of the fight, as we saw there. So pretty decent numbers, much better than she gets credit for. She's commonly considered a wet noodle, but that was far from a wet noodle. Although I'm not expecting her to be able to match up to Cable on total hits, I am curious on how she is going to do overall, because hits, total hits, and amount of damage per hit is just one part of everything you got to look at as a whole. So again, we do see Cable as Horseman synergy active for all these fights as well. But as I was saying, so I'm trying to figure out who's going to be my next R3 mutant. There's a couple others I'm looking at too, to include. Domino is up there, Emma Frost is up there, and I like them both, but there's things that are kind of hesitant towards me on both of them for the rank up. Emma's one of my favorite champs, especially utility champs. I'm just worried she doesn't do the damage that is going to be needed for Act 7. I'm really thinking about Act 7 coming up. I'm just worried she doesn't do the damage for that consistently, although her utility is insanely amazing. Then there is Domino. And the thing with Domino is I already have her as an R5 5-star max 200 sig, and I'm sure an R3 could do a little bit more, but is that the best use? And I don't even use my R5 that much Domino anyways. I know she doesn't need synergy, but she does benefit, and it really benefits from the double synergies and her RNG. So I like Domino a lot. I just don't know if I need an R3 of her when I barely use my R5 5-star of her. So that's also getting me to look at heavily now on Cable and Pyslocke, and I have pros and cons to say about both of them, as well as I'm really have these into really my final 4. But we'll see total hits on Cable 58, time 1.5 minutes, and he allowed 9 specials. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Cable's going to be winning but the hits a lot, but losing the specials a lot. But total time is a curiosity, because that means a lot. Round 1 stance, Cable 42 less hits. Cable was 14 seconds faster, and Pyslocke used 7 less specials. So round 1 goes to Cable based on those criteria I determined at the beginning. So let's go into round 2. And some of these could play a role because you can't judge a champ just on total hit count, because if you take a while to get those hits, like if you go into the parry heavy style, especially a little more passive AI, it's going to take a bit, like on Cable. Meanwhile, Psylocke, when you get the power lock going on, which is pretty very easy to do and to maintain, which I explain on the tutorial I've done on here. I recommend watching my Psylocke tutorial if you don't know how to use her. Once you get the power lock, you don't gotta worry. She also has really good intercepting playstyle. I know a lot of people talk about when they go in Psylocke or Magik, I'll compare. People say, oh, Magik's just got better intercepting animation style. Psylocke's got the exact same thing. They're both very good. Both Psylocke and Magik just intercept cleaner than a lot of the other champs. So once you get them locked in, you can pit them against the corner. Sure, you might take a minor hit once in a rare while, but a good thing about the Horseman synergy too is that it gives you an unstoppable. So if you do accidentally take a hit on a bad timed interception, you can just shrug it off. You might have to start back over on the power control, but that's very easy to lock back in. And I like her because if you push the opponent to an S2, you can lock in your power control with only one special, which only costs 5% recoil for total power control with Psylocke. Maybe you might have to do two S1s at times as well, which will be a total of 10%, which is more than good to get through several fights with her, especially when you can just lock them down. And I like measuring power control. I'm using the same criteria I used when I measured Psylocke against Magik in that fight. But I like measuring the power control because if you control their power, that changes the fight completely. Lets you be more aggressive, quicker, like we see there. You don't have to worry about, especially those harder attacks to decks. So 98 hits. Remember, these are 550,000 health pools. 98 hits, 1 minute 51 seconds, and 3 total specials used. I made one mistake that made me lose permanent power lock temporarily, but we saw I easily gain it back up. So that one did take 3 total for a 550-ish thousand health pool. Now moving on to Cable. Again, I'm trying to use the champs to the best playstyle. For when I haven't used Cable a whole lot. I just recently duped him, and I just recently R2'd him. So I'm using him more lately, and I do see what the hype is without a doubt about him. He is great. He is absolutely R3 worthy with Apocalypse, which I have as an R5 5-star Sig 200. I think it's Sig 200 Apocalypse. And most people agree he is R3 worthy with that. Although, which is always, and the reason I'm comparing these two is because people pretty much easily and quickly say Cable's worth the rank ups, but when talking about Psylocke, people are quickly default that she's dependent on synergy. And both champs are dependent on the exact same synergy, but really I started doing this for my own well-being as I've been really looking at my options for my next R3, and I said, you know what, why not film my criteria? This is something, what I'm doing here is something I do a lot when I'm really stuck with a rank up decision, especially a big one like an R3. If it's close between a couple, I'll do some comparisons. And this is exactly what I'm doing. I decided let's have some fun with it and show what I got. I'm not saying either is better. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying these are the fairest criteria. They are the ones that I look at on things I used to measure when I'm deciding on what I like on a champ. And big things, I need to see how well they can do damage to an opponent, especially in endgame content. I need to see how well they can allow me to control the fight, which is where power control can come in, especially when you deal with unblockables, different nodes, power gain nodes, all that kind of stuff. And if you're going to say Psylocke doesn't work good against power increase nodes, you don't know how to use her correctly, please be sure to watch my tutorial on how to use her. She actually is extremely good against champs with increased power gain or nodes, or champs like Hyperion. She can completely dominate them. And I explained that in the tutorial, but a lot of people do not fully understand her play style, and that's why some of those misconceptions were born. So this is what I'm looking at. How well can I control the fight? How well do I think they are going to do good for me in in-game content? And like I said, pros and cons of the other two ones I'm looking at, Domino and as Emma, an endgame content where I'm at. I think both could be amazing on endgame content, but I do have some reservations on both. And just like I have reservations on both Cable and Psylocke for endgame content. And that's why I'm kind of working through them here. So here we got 61 hits, over 550 KH health pulls, 2 minutes and 14 seconds. So even though it was less hits, It took longer because it had to deal with those unblockable. Those specials play a role and longer time. So Cable used 37 less hits. However, Pyslocke was 23 seconds faster, and Pyslocke allowed 7 less specials. So round 2 goes to Pyslocke based on those 3 criteria. So it's tied 1-1 right now as far as on this best of 3. Cable won round 1, Pyslocke won round 2. And that's the big thing why I like to look at some of the specials and time, because sometimes people can misjudge hit counts for someone. Quake, you could say, oh, Quake does that fight in 0 hits. Sure, it might take 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and is that worth the amount of time and effort in that? For some, yes, for some, no. It's going to be based on fight. It's going to be my opinion, but the key being the total amount of hits or damage per hit is by far and away not an end-all be-all. And the power control is big too. Some of these harder to deal with specials, especially newer champs, then you don't want to keep taking block damage. You don't want to have to keep worrying about dexing, especially some of the trickier timing ones. But this is why I like power control with Pyslocke. You see I can just kind of corner him in and just kind of go to town on him. And you see how her intercepting just works really smooth right there. That's one of my favorite things. I get that power lock going on. Something I've been a fan of her since before Apocalypse Synergy, but the biggest argument against her in the past, and I have to agree with, was her lower damage, so it took longer. Now, as we see, she does pretty insanely good damage with the Horseman synergy. I mean, she does very, very good damage. She is not a top damage dealer. No. Is she better than most in damage with this synergy? Yes, she is. Is she lower than Cable? Yes, she is. Does she add different utility than he does? And it goes into so many different things, which is why I do things like this, looking at the rank ups. But we will see, does she do enough damage to compete in endgame content? Yes, plus her with synergy. And that is one of the cons with her and Cable. Both have one of the biggest cons, is they both share the Apocalypse synergy need. But a lot of champs benefit from synergies. Thing needs an entire synergy team in a wordplay style to be good, but people love him. So we got 97 hits, 1 minute 44 seconds. Only one special held him to one special the entire time. And there we go. So that is the first fight from round 3. Now let's bring Cable up for the same fight, again with the Horseman synergy going on, and see how this one goes. And like I said, the reason why I like power control is because you can just, it can speed up the fight. It can speed up the control. You can take less block damage, less risk, less a lot of issues. And that's one of my, like I said, one of my favorite things about her, because she has arguably the best, at least in the top couple, best power control in the game when used correctly. And that goes a long way in this game. So we're wrapping up the final fight with Cable. And then whoever wins this round is going to win the fight. So we see that degeneration going a lot. He just does Cable with the synergy really does melt the damage off. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Also, for the sake of getting his hit counts lower, I'm trying to play him with the preferred heavy parry style as much as possible. If I was to just throw in 5-hit combos all the time, I would greatly inflate his hit count, which I'm trying to avoid doing. Trying to keep it as fair based on these criteria as humanly possible. If I get a chance to get aggressive like you just saw there, you better believe I am. Is it a little bit slower? Sometimes the passive AI, no denying that. Again, I'm not saying who's better. I'm not saying who's worth their rank up more. I'm just comparing them and showing, hey, they're both pretty good. The big difference, though, Cable is become well known as a great Apocalypse Horseman synergy champ, mainly because a couple of the bigger YouTubers highlighted them. Pyslocke, meanwhile, is kind of pretty much ignored. So we see 60 hits here, we see 1 minute 37 seconds there, and we see 9 specials used. So again, Cable wins the hits, again Pyslocke wins the special, so it goes down to time, and what we're going to see is there's a 7-second difference. So Cable wins with 7 seconds faster. He wins the round. He wins the series 2-1 based on 7 seconds. And of course, those are arguable factors, but there's quantitative analysis no matter what based on the set criteria. So both seem pretty dang good. Cable does win the challenge. He won the series 2-1. Both champs, some final thoughts, rely on Horseman synergy. Both are great but different, shine in different ways. They both need the synergy. The series was close. Cable dominated in less hits. Psylocke completely dominated in power. Both had similar total times. It depends on stuff. So both are amazing champs. I enjoy them both. I don't know who my next R3 is. Stay tuned to see. I will have that done in the very near future. Don't forget to check out my other videos. Don't forget to click that top left icon and subscribe to MCOC, Al Bundy Rules. Thank you so much for watching.